Sometimes in life, we prepare ourselves for many roles: as a daughter, as a wife, as a mother, as a companion. We imagine walking side by side with someone, sharing silence, laughter, responsibilities, and dreams. When we say that a woman's worth is not defined by the presence or absence of a life partner, we are challenging one of the deepest beliefs society has quietly planted in our minds. From a very young age, many women are taught, directly or indirectly, that completeness comes from being chosen, accepted, or accompanied by someone else. Stories, movies, conversations, and even casual remarks slowly create an idea that a woman is somehow unfinished until she has a partner beside her. Over time, this belief becomes so normal that it is rarely questioned. But worth is not something that arrives with another person. Worth is inherent. A woman does not gain value because someone decides to stay with her, and she does not lose value because someone leaves, passes away, or was never part of her journey. Her worth existed before any relationship and continues long after any relationship changes. It is rooted in her character, her values, her ability to love, to endure, to learn, and to grow. When a woman starts measuring herself through the lens of companionship, she unknowingly hands over control of her self-esteem. Her happiness becomes dependent on circumstances she cannot always control. But life is unpredictable. People change, situations shift, and paths diverge. If worth is tied to another human being, then every change feels like a personal failure, even when it is not. A woman without a life partner often discovers aspects of herself that remain hidden in comfort. She learns decision-making without constant reassurance. She develops emotional independence, resilience, and clarity about who she is and what she stands for. These qualities are not signs of lack, they are signs of depth. Yet society rarely celebrates this strength because it does not fit into familiar definition of success. True worth does not need validation from a relationship status. It shows itself in self-respect, in boundaries, in the courage to face life honestly. A woman's smile, her struggles, her wisdom, and her compassion do not disappear when a partner is absent. In many cases, they become more refined. When she stops asking, "Am I enough without someone?" and starts realizing, "I have always been enough," something powerful shifts inside her because she no longer seeks permission to value herself, and she begins to see her life not as incomplete, but as unfolding in its own unique way, shaped by experiences that are preparing her for a deeper understanding of herself and the world around her. Expand. No two keynote, no 6 it into 400 words. Don't add ending sentences. Don't add any heading. Loneliness is often misunderstood as a sign of weakness, something to be avoided at all costs, something that only appears when life has gone wrong. Society treats loneliness like a punishment, especially for a woman without a life partner, as if being alone automatically means being unhappy or incomplete. But loneliness itself is not the enemy. It is an experience, and like all experiences, it can either break a person or shape them, depending on how it is understood. When loneliness is resisted, it becomes heavy. When it is feared, it becomes suffocating. But when it is accepted with awareness, it begins to teach. In moments of solitude, a woman is forced to listen to her own thoughts without distraction. There is no constant noise of opinions, no immediate emotional crutches, no one else to absorb her attention. This silence, though uncomfortable at first, becomes a mirror. It reflects unresolved emotions, buried fears, and long-forgotten dreams. Loneliness teaches self-reliance in the most honest way. A woman learns how to comfort herself during difficult moments, how to motivate herself when no one is watching, and how to sit with her emotions instead of running away from them. This process is not easy, but it builds emotional maturity. She stops expecting others to fill every empty space within her and begins to understand that some spaces are meant to be explored alone. There is also a clarity that emerges in loneliness. Without external influence, a woman begins to recognize what truly matters to her. She understands which relationships are genuine, which habits are draining, and which beliefs she has been carrying that no longer serve her. Loneliness strips away illusions and forces honesty, and honesty, though painful, is deeply liberating. Over time, loneliness transforms from a burden into a guide. It teaches patience, awareness, and self-respect. A woman who has walked through loneliness learns to value meaningful connection rather than mere presence. She no longer fears being alone because she has learned that solitude is not emptiness, but space. Space to heal, space to grow, space to rediscover inner strength that was always there but never needed before. And when loneliness is no longer seen as a punishment, it becomes one of life's most powerful teachers, quietly shaping a woman into someone who understands herself deeply, stands firmly in her own presence, and carries a calm strength that does not depend on constant companionship. Inner strength often remains dormant when life feels secure and predictable. As long as external support is available, we lean on it without realizing how much power is already within us. When that support is suddenly removed, whether through loss, separation, or unexpected change, it can feel frightening and unfair. But it is precisely in these moments that inner strength begins to awaken, not because the situation is easy, but because survival demands growth. When a woman no longer has someone to rely on emotionally or practically, she is pushed into unfamiliar territory. Decisions that were once shared now rest solely on her shoulders. At first, this responsibility feels overwhelming, but slowly, confidence develops through action. Each choice she makes, each problem she solves, becomes evidence that she is capable. Strength does not arrive dramatically. It builds quietly through repeated moments of courage. The absence of external support also reshapes emotional resilience. Without someone else to absorb fear, disappointment, or doubt, a woman learns how to process her emotions independently. She learns to pause instead of panic, to reflect instead of react. This emotional self-regulation becomes one of her greatest assets, allowing her to face challenges with clarity rather than chaos. There is also a shift in identity when support is removed. A woman begins to see herself not as someone who needs to be protected, but as someone who can protect her own peace. She becomes more selective about what she allows into her life, more aware of her boundaries, and more respectful of her own time and energy. These changes are not signs of hardness, they are signs of wisdom. Inner strength grows strongest when expectations fall away. Without someone else to depend on, a woman discovers how resourceful she can be. She learns new skills, adapts to new roles, and finds solutions she never imagined she could create on her own. What once seemed impossible slowly becomes manageable and then familiar. This kind of strength is deeply rooted. It does not depend on applause, approval, or constant reassurance. It is formed in silence, reinforced through experience, and carried with quiet confidence. A woman who has grown strong in the absence of support walks differently through life. She does not fear instability because she knows she can rebuild. She does not collapse when things go wrong because she has already faced uncertainty and survived it. And this strength stays with her, shaping her choice, her mindset, and her ability to move forward with resilience and self-trust. Even when the path ahead is unclear, society has a habit of placing labels on people, especially on women, and then expecting them to live according to those labels. Words like married, unmarried, divorced, widowed, or alone are often used as if they fully describe a woman's identity. Over time, these labels become heavier than they should be, quietly influencing how a woman is treated and, more dangerously, how she begins to see herself. When a woman starts believing that a label defines her destiny, She limits her own potential without realizing it. Labels are convenient for society because they simplify complex lives. But a human life is never simple. A woman is not a category, she is a journey. Her dreams, values, experiences, and inner strength cannot be summarized by a single word attached to her relationship status. Yet society often assigns expectations to these labels, suggesting how a woman should behave, what she should feel, and what her future should look like. When a woman accepts these labels without questioning them, she may start living to meet expectations that are not her own. She may feel pressured to justify her choices, defend her life, or prove her worth. This constant need for validation slowly drains confidence and peace. The real danger is not the label itself, but the belief that the label has authority over her life. Destiny is shaped by choices, not by opinions. A woman's future is influenced by her mindset, her actions, and her willingness to grow. When she decides to look beyond societal definitions, she reclaims control over her narrative. She begins to understand that respect does not come from fitting into a category, but from honoring her own values. Many women who are judged or underestimated by society go on to build meaningful, purposeful lives precisely because they refuse to be limited by labels. They invest in self-development, emotional stability, and inner peace. They create lives that are aligned with who they truly are, not with who society expects them to be. Breaking free from labels requires courage. It means choosing self-trust over approval, authenticity over acceptance, and purpose over comparison. When a woman no longer allows society's definitions to dictate her direction, she steps into her own power. Her destiny becomes something she actively shapes rather than something she passively accepts, guided by self-respect, clarity, and the confidence to live life on her own terms, regardless of how others choose to define her or what name they attach to her. Circumstances, purpose, and self-respect are the foundation of a meaningful life, yet they are often overlooked when dependence becomes the center of existence. Many women are encouraged to build their sense of security around another person, believing that stability, direction, and happiness will naturally come from that connection. While relationships can add beauty to life, they cannot replace a sense of purpose or self-respect. When dependence takes priority, a woman may slowly lose touch with her own identity. Self-respect begins with recognizing one's own value, independent of external support. It is the ability to stand by personal values, even when it is uncomfortable, to say no without guilt, and to choose dignity over convenience. When a woman lacks self-respect, she may tolerate situations that diminish her worth simply to avoid being alone. But when self-respect is strong, she understands that solitude is healthier than staying where she is not valued. Purpose gives direction to life. It provides a reason to wake up with intention, to grow, and to contribute meaningfully. A woman who anchors her life only in dependence may struggle when circumstances change, because her sense of direction is tied to someone else's presence. But when purpose comes first, she remains grounded regardless of who walks beside her. Her life continues to move forward because it is driven by meaning, not attachment. Dependence often creates fear. Fear of loss, fear of abandonment, fear of being left behind. Fear can silently control decisions, pushing a woman to compromise her dreams or silence her voice. When purpose and self-respect lead instead, fear begins to lose its grip. A woman becomes less concerned about being accepted and more focused on living honestly. Choosing purpose over dependence does not mean rejecting relationships. It means entering them from a place of wholeness rather than need. A woman who respects herself does not seek someone to complete her. She seeks connection that complements her life. She brings strength, clarity, and balance into her relationships instead of expectations rooted in insecurity. When self-respect and purpose become priorities, a woman's inner world stabilizes. She no longer measures her worth through someone else's behavior or presence. Her confidence comes from alignment with her values and commitment to her growth. This shift transforms how she experiences life, relationships, and challenges, allowing her to move forward with independence, emotional stability, and a deep sense of dignity that remains intact. Regardless of circumstances or companionship, standing alone is often seen as a sign of vulnerability, especially for a woman. But in reality, it can be one of the deepest expressions of strength. When a woman learns to stand on her own, she is no longer leaning on reassurance, approval, or constant emotional support. She faces life directly, without hiding behind someone else's presence. And that takes immense courage. Strength is not always loud or visible. Sometimes it is quiet, steady, and rooted in self-belief. A woman who stands alone has usually walked through moments of uncertainty. She has faced questions about her choices, her future, and her worth. Without someone else to validate her decisions, she learns to trust her own judgment. This trust becomes the backbone of her confidence. She no longer waits for permission to move forward. She moves because she knows she must. Every step she takes alone reinforces the belief that she is capable of handling whatever comes next. Standing alone also sharpens emotional awareness. A woman becomes deeply familiar with her inner world because there is no distraction from her own thoughts and feelings. She understands her fears instead of running from them, and she learns how to calm herself during difficult moments. This emotional strength allows her to remain composed in situations that might overwhelm others. She is not unaffected by pain, but she is not defeated by it either. When a woman stands alone, she develops resilience through experience rather than theory. Life tests her patience, adaptability, and endurance. Each challenge she faces without support becomes a lesson in self-reliance. Over time, she stops seeing obstacles as threats and begins to view them as part of her growth. This shift in perspective changes how she responds to hardship. There is also a quiet dignity in standing alone. A woman who does not depend on constant companionship carries herself differently. She is selective with her energy and careful about who she allows into her life. She values meaningful connection because she understands the cost of emotional investment. Her strength is not about proving anything to the world, but about staying true to herself. A woman who has learned to stand alone does not fear solitude or change. She knows that even if everything familiar is taken away, she still has herself. That knowledge creates unshakable inner stability. Her strength is not borrowed, not temporary, and not dependent on circumstances. It is built from experience, self-trust, and the courage to face life independently, rooted in a calm confidence that remains steady even when the world around her feels uncertain. So, whether life has walked alongside you or asked you to walk alone, remember this: your value is never measured by who stays and never by who leaves.